who you are, your affiliation, and why you are with us today. And with that, let's dive in here. So welcome everyone to our Leading for DEI 2021 information session, co-hosted by Baumhart Center and Loyola's Institute for Racial Justice. For those of you who might be joining Baumhart or the Institute for Racial Justice for the first time, I am Emily Nordquist, and on a day like this where I have the opportunity to be in conversation with Dr. Henfield and talking about an exciting new partnership with the Institute for Racial Justice, I couldn't be more thrilled to be Baumhart Center's interim director and senior program manager. So on the next slide here, we are going to be talking about Leading for DEI. And Leading for DEI is a first of its kind partnership between Baumhart and the Institute for Racial Justice. At Loyola, we call the Institute for Racial Justice IRJ for short. So if it's okay with this group, I'm going to use IRJ going forward, but know that that is what it stands for. And so we're excited to be able to share about that partnership with this group. But first, I want to turn it over to Dr. Henfield. He is our founding dean and a professor for the Institute for Racial Justice, and he's going to take a few minutes just to share a little bit more about the Institute for Racial Justice and the why behind this partnership and program. So Dean Henfield, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Emily, and everyone else for joining us today. This is an exciting time in Loyola's history where we're really diving deeply into some of the more prominent issues of the day, with one of them being obviously the fight for racial justice. So we will go into more detail at a later time about how the Institute came to be. But what I'm really excited to share today is this exciting new partnership with the Baumhart Center. Everyone knows about that center and the great work that they've been doing over the years. And what we're looking to do is just to add on to some of that. And one of the first ways that we've thought about partnering is with the Leading for DEI initiative. And the way that we see it is trying to bring more research emphasis in the experience for the participants and those others who may choose to learn more about the experience. So for example, if you can imagine going into a classroom, in any traditional classroom that you've been a part of, you'll sit down and listen to the professor and they teach about theory and so on and so forth. But what we're thinking about is not just about the theory, but the application of it, and not just the application of it, but also trying to practice. My background is in school counseling, and in my field, what we do is we take theory, we talk about what it would look like in action, and then we also have individuals practice some of those things. So if you can imagine, many of the individuals on the call are probably part of an organization where you have someone to whom you directly report. And let's just be real here, right? We're all human and we want to put our best feet forward. So in this regard, we're looking at the Leading for DEI initiative as a place where people can be their whole selves, where you can bring all of your vulnerabilities and learn about some of the skill sets you need to be successful in the workplace. And that includes admitting what you just don't know. This is the place to share some of those things. And we're looking forward to partnering with Baumhart in these endeavors. Next slide, please. So to zoom out a little bit, we're thinking about it in terms of building internal capacities, right? So like I mentioned earlier, how might we work with individuals in their day-to-day jobs? How might you be successful when you're potentially not necessarily comfortable sharing the things that you are confused about, the things that you have questions about, when you're feeling like you have to put on a face in order to be successful in your work environment? At Loyola, we care about the whole person, the whole individual, and we want you to show up as that true whole person, and we will give you the support that you need in order to be the best person that you can be in your place of work. And over time, we're going to obviously have many participants in this initiative, and we're hoping to learn from them even beyond their graduation from the program, right? You'll be an alumnus of Loyola in a lot of ways, and all of the benefits that come along with that. Because of our cohort model, we'll be expecting you to engage with us as the years progress, and we would like to learn more about you and what you're experiencing. And from those learnings, we would like to expand our reach and share some of them with others external to Loyola. And finally, we would like to create convenings, summits, experiences for those who've been in the program and others in the Chicagoland area and the rest of the country, in fact, to come back and listen and learn from some of the experts, because once you graduate from the program, to some extent, you are an expert, at least in your experience. And we want to share on those experiences and also build on them in collaboration with others who may have experienced similar issues in their workplaces, and try to, again, continue to live and learn from one another in order to make the world a more just place. So thank you. I appreciate the time that I came here to share a little bit about the experience that we're trying to build here with the Baumhart Center. And if you have any questions about IRJ specifically, please feel free to reach out to me directly.
Amazing. Thank you, Dean Henfield. And on the next few slides, I'm hoping to share with you a little bit more about Baumhart Center. Some of you might already be familiar with our work, but for those of you who are joining for the first time, Baumhart Center is a social enterprise and responsibility hub that is a part of a business school that is leading globally for social purpose. So recently, the Financial Times conducted a survey across 250 business schools in the world, and they ranked all of those schools across 4 categories of impact. Only 4 of those schools were ranked in the highest 3 of 4 categories. 2 of those schools were in France. I will not attempt to pronounce their names. One of those schools was UC Berkeley, and the other one was the Quinlan School of Business. So this commitment to social purpose is core to our work. And if we go to the next slide, our mission at Baumhart Center specifically is to prepare leaders from across all sectors to thrive at the intersection of profit and purpose. And we are preparing business leaders with business tools that they need to accelerate social impact and advance higher purpose leadership in their careers. And just to step back, we see business tools as tools for efficiency that can be aligned with purpose and not just with profit. So that's kind of our orientation to the words business tools. And we do this through a nationally recognized MBA called the Baumhart Scholars, and through several cohort-based programs for professional leaders, including the Leading for DEI cohort. And then finally, on the last slide, here at Baumhart, we are committed to raising the standards for business. So each year we celebrate 3 companies who are really leading innovation in social business practice. And we hope that other companies will see these annual innovator awards and have the opportunity to learn from companies that are truly paving the way for a more just and impact-oriented type of business leadership. And in 2021, we celebrated Cleveland Avenue and the Cafe, Honeywell, and Sweet Green for advancing social business practice. So on the next slide, as Baumhart Center is leaning into its mission, and as Loyola is launching its new Institute for Racial Justice, we started to see an opportunity for a bold partnership that would provide business leaders and executives with tangible tools to advance DEI in their workplaces. Leading for DEI brings together Baumhart's expertise in higher purpose business education and IRJ's cutting research in DEI and racial justice. And it really gives cohort members access to immersive peer learning and individualized and tailored one-on-one coaching. And the thing that I think is so powerful about this partnership between Baumhart Center and the Institute for Racial Justice is that participants in Leading for DEI are going to have direct access to all of the resources that an institution like Loyola University Chicago can offer. That includes real-world case studies, access to data-driven decision-making experts, and to the enormous network of alumni, faculty, and students who are leading in both research and practice across hundreds of disciplines. So why are we invested in this work? You know, we are a higher education institution that is situated in a city with one of the most stark racial wealth gaps in the country. And so we believe that it's imperative for us as a university to be a part of the solution. And we believe that this work belongs to all of us. So that is a big why behind this collaboration and this Leading for DEI program. And going to the next slide, why diversity, equity, and inclusion? Well, we see DEI as both a human and a business imperative. DEI is a human issue that has been brought into the workplace. It is a 400+ year human problem that has influenced modern day capitalism and business practice. And it's also a business imperative if companies want to be able to attract and retain the best talent, and if they want to be equipped for innovation in the future. We also know that there's a clear impact to the bottom line when companies do have racial and ethnic diversity on their senior executive teams, and yet we have still not seen the change that we need to see. And lastly, there is a societal impact if we don't address inequity, especially racial and economic inequity. And here you can see the stat. We have seen a $20 trillion loss in economic output over the last 20 years because of these divides. And so as an institution in Chicago that's focused on these issues, we want to ensure that we are part, again, of the solution. So going to the next slide. Our goal with Leading for DEI and Baumhart's partnership with the Institute for Racial Justice is to help business leaders develop a deeper understanding of the human and business case for DEI. We want to encourage executive commitment to advancing this work. We want to help companies build enterprise-level strategies for DEI that go beyond just HR and people operations. And we want to inspire peer and cross-industry learning in Chicago and beyond. And that comes from a belief that it isn't always helpful to benchmark for DEI within just your own industry, and a belief that this work should be transparent and shared. And we want to build, as Dean Henfield said, this curated safe space for people to share the things that they don't know, the things that they're struggling with. Where have they been successful? And that's something that is important to this cohort experience. On the next slide here, Leading for DEI accomplishes all four of those goals by offering a combination of executive education, including an immersive opening retreat and facilitated cohort sessions that follow, and 3 one-on-one coaching sessions where you have the opportunity to be paired with a coach to help you through the work in advancing DEI in your workplace. And on the next slide, those sessions are led by extraordinary leaders. We are so grateful to have people like Connie Lindsay at Northern Trust and Vince Williams at the Chicago Minority Supplier Development Council, and several CEOs from leading DEI firms in Chicago who have been our close partners in developing this cohort program over the last 2 years. And one of those extraordinary people is Monica Gupta. I'm going to finally stop talking and turn it over to Monica, because she is our lead facilitator for DEI, and she is the true visionary behind this cohort experience. So Monica, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Emily. It's always awkward to see a huge picture of your face on the screen, but I will welcome it. And I just want to say how grateful and humbled I am to be a part of this cohort program and the Leading for DEI programming. So I want to share a little bit about myself to start. Some of you may have looked at my LinkedIn profile, and I don't think it tells a full story. I'm first generation American. My parents came to the US from India, and that came with, a different set of experiences that have really shaped what I view my role as, both as a business leader and in society. I attended Loyola University for my undergraduate and graduate degrees, and I found that Loyola really did emphasize a whole human experience beyond just teaching me business skills, business ethics, and sort of that the Jesuit experience that Loyola is known for. I studied in India and Spain while at Loyola. I developed cultural competence beyond what I was taught in my home and in my country by living in other countries. And I have to say, this program does a great job of integrating multiple different aspects of what we call learning experiences through the cohort experience, through peer networking, through the coaching relationships, and through each other. As both Dean Henfield and Emily said, we want to share what you all are going through as DEI practitioners, as leaders within your companies, and learn from one another. Because what I've learned being a DEI practitioner is that we don't really fully understand what good looks like yet at any company. Every company has a different set of issues that they're dealing with and is working to resolve them in different ways. And so this theory versus application is a really important part of the program. So let's, Emily, if we could move forward. So the learning objectives of the program. And these are really split across, I would say, the initial retreats, the initial sessions, as well as the cohort and your peer-to-peer learning, is to understand systemic inequity we face as a society, to understand the roles companies play in advancing equity and inclusion. And I think the important thing here is how we define the purpose of a business. That understanding is evolving. Before it was just for profit, and now stakeholder groups are expecting more. So we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about how that shows up in each of your companies. Developing a deeper understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion as a business imperative. So how does diversity, equity, and inclusion as a business imperative tie to the purpose of your company? That changes a lot. That perspective changes a lot. It changes how we think when we walk into the door. It changes how we interact with each other. Aligning DEI strategy with enterprise strategy. So you can see how this all flows down from the purpose of the business to the role of DEI to strategy. And one of the things we find in DEI right now, current state, is that DEI strategy is sometimes separate from business strategy. So there's a profit piece and there's a people piece, which Emily was getting at. And where we see more success is that it's embedded. The strategy is embedded. The way we talk about it is embedded. It doesn't just show up in the HR conversation. It shows up in how we talk about business as a whole. And then we'll talk about building DEI strategies that are relevant to your organization and your employees. And this will be through that practical application that Dr. Henfield addressed. We want you to, we want to propose a high-level framework for current state assessment and for strategy, and for you all to start to think about and have your conversations internally. What does current state look like at my organization? What are the things we could be doing differently? Let's talk about that in these sessions. We'll get into developing skills to manage complex organizational change, and then also talk about individual and role-based skills. So I think this lends itself nicely to the next slide. We talked about learning through self-study and assignments. So some of that practical application and some of the assignments you'll get heading into the cohort sessions. We talked about cohort training and discussion will be a critical piece of that. Your interaction with each other. We talked about one-on-one coaching, and you saw on the screen with Emily that Emily shared earlier, we have a phenomenal set of 3 coaches who have an extensive amount of experience in the DEI space. And we talked about peer-to-peer networking. So all 4 of those things kind of collate into this experience that we're creating. We can move to the next slide. Our guiding text for the curriculum, I would say at a high level, is the book called The Conversation by Dr. Robert Livingston. He's a Harvard professor and has spent years talking to companies, employees across levels about how to truly embed DEI and move the needle on racial equity in the workplace. And so we'll draw from learnings from his book, as well as other case studies, my own experience as a DEI practitioner across Fortune 500 companies, and your own experiences as we build on our learning. So this is hard to read, so I'll walk you through it. We'll have a retreat, as Emily mentioned, to start. And that retreat will focus on understanding racial inequity in general in society. So the problem that we're trying to solve, the root cause of that problem, how did we get here? And beginning to think through empathy. Do we care enough about this to do something about it? In our cohort sessions, which are I would say 3 through 7, rows 3 through 7 on this, we're really talking about correction, which Robert Livingston gets into in his book, which is now, how do we change it? What are the things that need to happen? And we look at this on an organizational level. So again, how do we understand current state at our organization? What are the strategies that we can develop to help resolve some of the key areas of opportunity? And we'll talk about it also on an individual and role-based level. So role-based is, when I show up as a leader or as an individual in the workplace every day, what can I do? How can I lead teams? How can I lead inclusively? And then as a person in life, how am I showing up in society? And you'll work on some of those pieces with your coaches. We'll spend a lot of time on the organizational and role-based piece in the cohort sessions. Go to the next slide.
Yeah.
This is Emily.
I think this was me. Thank you so much, Monica. Monica has been so thoughtful about curating this cohort experience. And, if you're interested, feel free. Dr. Livingston has an article. It's pretty brief, but it walks through sort of the high level model that we're using for this program. So we can share that with all of you as well if you're interested in learning more. And this slide is just what it takes to join Leading for DEI. So you can see some of the things that we're looking for and the types of leaders that might be a part of this program. Our application is now open on our website, and we'll show that in the next slide. And we do conduct interviews for this program. So just a note, if you have already applied for the program, we have not started reviewing applications yet, but we imagine in August reaching out to conduct interviews with all of the applicants. And we are also happy to connect in the days ahead if you do have any questions, or if you just want to understand, is this the right fit for me? What could I contribute? What could I gain from this cohort experience? We are open. And if we go to the very last slide here, you can see the website for the program that also has a link to the live application. So luc.edu/leading4DEI. I've included my contact here as well, enordquist1@luc.edu. Feel free to reach out with questions, or if you're just looking to learn more. And Dion so kindly linked the article from Dr. Robert Livingston from HBR in the chat here. So you can click it there and kind of get a sense of the framing for this experience. So thank you for that, Dion. And with that, maybe we will stop recording and stop sharing our screen and give you all the chance to ask questions.